Hi everyone, Mr. Johnson here, and today we are talking about our still life drawing project. So for this particular project, what we're going to be doing is creating a still life drawing based on an arrangement of objects that I've set up in my classroom. And we'll be taking a photograph of these objects from any angle that you choose, any section that you choose, not the entire thing, just a part of it. And then, like the examples on the screen, we'll be creating a black and white drawing with one section done in color to create emphasis. So as you can see with the three examples that are on the screen here, these beautiful still life drawings, one part of each drawing is then done in color, and that really draws your eye there, and it creates a really cool visual. It's a different kind of take on a traditional still life drawing, so we get still all of those very classic drawing elements, but it's done in a really interesting way. So there are three parts to creating a still life drawing. That's hierarchy, which means objects that are closer to the viewer are lower on the paper. Objects that are farther away are higher up on the paper. Overlap, objects that are closer to the viewer overlap the objects that are behind them. That creates that sense of depth. And proportion, really look at your objects. Make sure they're in proportion to each other. So is one object half as tall as another? Is another object 3 times as wide? Compare the objects to each other. Now, we've done some drawing assignments before, so the basics to this are going to be very similar. But you're going to choose your composition. So you'll look at the still life that's set up in my classroom. Now, if you're an all virtual student and you're at home, I've taken a whole bunch of photos of that still life from different angles. So you can choose one to base your drawing on. If you're in the class, you'll be taking your own photo of a section of the still life that you like. It should have at least 3 objects in it. Probably most of them will have a lot more than that, but you want to make sure you have some variety. You don't want it too crowded, right? So we'll really take a look at your section and make sure you have an interesting composition chosen. You'll do a rough sketch loosely right at first. Look for basic shapes and lay that out on the paper as we have done in the past. Things like reflections, highlight areas, I like to draw those out with the pencil. Then when we start shading in the really dark areas, blending in those values, and you'll be left with those highlights that are still drawn out. We'll add white in there at the end. It should be really, really fun. So this is an example of a still life drawing that I did 2 or 3 years ago. That was based on some of the objects that are set up in the classroom. So now this is all done in color. This is done in chalk pastel. And so I worked on this, a few years ago. And, it uses the rule of thirds and diagonals to create interest, right? So hopefully a lot of the things that we're talking about for our composition, you'll see in my drawing here. But this is not exactly what we're doing, because ours is going to look more like this, which I created through the use of Photoshop. So obviously my real drawing doesn't have, the one section in color and the rest of it black and white, because that's not what I was doing at the time. But I made it look like that using Photoshop. But this is what our finished product is more likely going to look like. You're going to be working on gray paper. That means you can draw in black areas and white areas for highlights. So the middle value is already there. I find this a lot more exciting than starting with white paper, having to build up all the values. If you start with gray, you can draw in the dark areas with black and the light areas with white. And you'll choose one section that you'll make in full color, right, like the version of mine, the edited version of mine on the screen. I chose that rectangle in the bottom left, but you can choose any section that you want. You want to be strategic about it, right? Which area are you going to pick? Here's an example, right, where the whole still life drawing is black and white, except for one area that is in color. Now, you'll have the option, I believe, to choose different materials for this. I'm not really sure what would work best. It could be colored pencil, chalk pastel, oil pastel. So we'll kind of experiment. We'll see. Here are 2 more beautiful still life drawings that we've altered to make them fit this assignment. So here you see that the drawing is done in shades of gray with a full range of values, right? Black, white, light gray, medium gray, dark gray, right? You get all those different values in there. And then one section that's chosen to be done in full color. Now you can choose any part that you want, but you want an interesting part because that's really going to draw your eye. It'll add a different dimension do a regular still life drawing. So here's what we're looking for. Composition: fill the space with an interesting part of the still life, and really fill the whole space on the page. Don't draw this small. This should go right off the edges of the paper. If you look at all of these examples that we looked at, look at how they really fill the space, how large the drawings are. They go right to the edges of the paper. That's what's going to make them awesome. You're going to work from a photograph for accuracy. So if you're in my classroom, you'll take your own photograph and work from that. If you're at home, I've provided a lot of photographs for you to choose from. I'm going to shade this drawing with black and white to create a full range of values. And for emphasis, choose one section of your drawing. Could be a circle, a rectangle, that's totally up to you, to emphasize with color. Be strategic in the section you choose. You want an interesting section, something that's really going to draw the eye. And use those composition tips to create a dynamic drawing. So maybe you're using the rule of thirds, maybe the rule of odds. Maybe we're zooming and cropping. Right? Maybe we're simplifying areas, whatever it may be. We're going to make sure we don't bisect it in half, right? Think about those compositional tips. I can't wait to see our finished drawings. We'll be working on them in class over the next few weeks. If you have questions, please let me know so that I can talk to you about your project. And I can't wait to see what you come up with. It should be a lot of fun.